Welcome to the Leadership Insights webinar series that DataZoom is putting together. We will be interviewing a number of leaders in different industries, leaders in their own right, and our first guest today will be Liam Black. Morning, Liam.
Hello, morning. Morning to you, Samir, mate. Yeah, I'm really well, really well. Thanks for having me on.
I'm really looking forward to this. A little bit about you, Liam. Just a little bit of history. I've known Liam now for since you were the CEO of Jamie Oliver's charity.
Yeah, so that I can tell you exactly how long that is. That's 14 years, my dear.
Is it been 14 years? Wow, I didn't realise it was so long.
Yeah.
Gosh. Okay. Yeah. Well,
you were young. You were fresh-faced. Had so much potential.
And here we are today.
Yeah.
I can picture you as probably one of the UK's most successful social entrepreneurs, and you've worked at a number of different companies. One of those being Jamie Oliver, but recently you've gone out on your own and you've formed a company called As We Please. And you previously co-founded Wavelength, which was an interesting company in the terms of building the leaders of tomorrow, and crossing the sort of divide between the private sector and the social and charitable sector. So that's a really interesting.
We spent after I left working with Jamie. I created with two friends Wavelength, and we did that for 10 years, amazingly, and brought together leaders from all sorts of industries and sectors to go on a whole range of leadership programs that we ran from Silicon Valley through to the rural areas of Bangladesh. I mean, we had hundreds and hundreds of people take part in our programs, and very exciting, and lots of great stuff happened as a result of that.
And I know. I mean, that's a fantastic bridge that you put together. What's interesting from there? Then you've gone into obviously executive chairman at Big White Wall. But quickly tell me what you're doing at As We Please. What is As We Please? What are you up to there?
So As We Please is just the sort of expression of what I want to be doing for the next 10 years of my life. So, having been a CEO in various companies, including with Jamie for 15 years, setting up and running a business with two partners for 10 years, over the next 10 years, which will take me, God help me, into my mid-60s, I just want to do stuff that I want to do.
Sure.
And so I have a now really interesting mix of things that I do. I remain an associate with Wavelength, so I'm still doing work with leaders. I do quite a lot of mentoring now.
Okay.
I am an exec chairman at a brilliant online business called Big White Wall, which provides support and therapy for people living with anxiety and depression.
Okay.
World. And I also sit on an advisory group that advises Centrica, the energy business, in spending 100 million quid in investing in entrepreneurs and new technology.
Okay.
I'm writing a book on leadership and middle-aged men.
Quite apt.
Yes, indeed, being one of those myself. And I try and spend as much time as I can also with my grandchildren. So As We Please is a platform that will enable me to collaborate with all sorts of different people all over the place to make the next 10 years of my life as hopefully interesting and useful in the world as I hope my career up till now has been.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a blistering career, but I think as we lead into the questions, I just wanted to understand about your journey, and specifically, you've had quite a journey from your early years, and certainly from when we sat down over a glass of whiskey or something. Where you've gone from being in a very inflexible type of organization. I say that it's inflexible. That's probably my own understanding, but from the church, from the Catholic Church, to then going into social, becoming a social entrepreneur, and then also in the corporate world as well, and and advising large companies in very large energy companies.
It's been a what's the word I shall use? Interesting journey. When I was talking to one of my children last night, and we were talking about life and the universe and everything. And I can't remember who said it, but life. The interestingness of life is it's lived forward, but only understood backwards. Mm-hmm. And as I look back on my career, it has been an interesting journey. So I'm the son of Irish Catholic immigrants who came over in the late 50s to work on the building sites of London. Mm-hmm. So that my brothers are bricky. All the men in my family are still in the construction game. And I was, as the oldest son of an Irish Catholic family, the thing that your mum wants is you to be a Catholic priest. So that's what I thought I would do for a while. Wow. And I was very involved. And I was even not considering, I was booked to go to the seminary when I was 18 in order to become a Catholic priest. But I got waylaid by a beautiful Irish woman called Maggie Sheehan.
Oh, well, there you go.
Who showed me another potential future. And then, so I married her when I was 20. Can you believe it?
Wow.
And then we worked overseas for 2 years as volunteer teachers with native Canadians in the far north of British Columbia. Okay. And then when I came back, I, again, through sheer serendipity, really, and unexpectedness, found myself in Liverpool, working for the Archdiocese there on a lot of the sort of gritty poverty and sort of development issues that Liverpool and the surrounding areas were facing. This is the mid-'80s.
So those were real social issues where Liverpool was probably still grappling.
My 20s were a real sort of hardcore learning for me. And then just did lots of other things. I was a fundraiser. I worked for the Catholic Church in Liverpool for 5 years. I then worked for the anti-apartheid movement and was a fundraiser and for the ANC. Went to South Africa quite a bit. Then Maggie fell pregnant with our second child, and I, traveling all around the townships, sniffing tear gas wasn't probably the best thing for a young father at that time. So I went to work for a homelessness organisation, and through that ended up running a social enterprise in Liverpool called the Furniture Resource Centre. Wrote a book about our experiences of trying to balance social change and enterprise. That book was read by Jamie Oliver. He got in touch, said, hey, we've got this thing called 15 that we've opened in London, and it's a bit of a shit show at the moment. Can you come and help us? So I did. We moved down 14 years ago. I met you. That was obviously a low point. And then had great experience with Jamie. We opened businesses in Cornwall and Amsterdam, Melbourne, as well as the London enterprise. Yeah. And then in my late 40s, with two friends, Adrian and Jessica, we've been talking for a while about, one day we'll do a business together. And we decided that business would be Wavelength, bringing together leaders in meaningful, useful ways. So we did that for 10 years. So a kind of varied career. But I think the one golden thread, if I can describe it like that, it's always been about leadership. It's always been about social change. It's always been about innovating. And I feel very fortunate. I mean, really fortunate for the career I've had so far. And I hope that, the next 10 years as I descend into my dotage, will be as interesting and useful as I hope that, the last 30 has been.
I think that's an interesting point, because it as you reflected back on your career, from helping the church in difficult times in terms of location in Liverpool, but then also switching to South Africa and being a fundraiser for the ANC, that took an almighty amount of leadership, no doubt, from your part, being a tall white man in a very, very black struggle. I don't really want to go down that route right now, but I think that takes a huge amount of purpose. And as a leader, I think that's a very important aspect that, I can see that thread that runs through your certainly your journey. About purpose. Tell me about purpose quickly and what it means for a leader.
Oh, I think it's absolutely vital. I think although I'm not a Catholic anymore and I've left sort of religious belief like that a long way behind me now, there's no doubt that the formation I had in the church was, and I was lucky to be in a part of the church that really talked about, the option for the poor and social action in the world. There's no doubt that has been a big driver of my life, and I think in everything I've tried to do is to have that purpose, that there is a purpose to leadership and there is a purpose to organizations and enterprise and business beyond simply, profit maximization or personal enrichment. And a purpose is, a word that more and more over the last 10 years you've heard in business, that,
of course,
businesses to survive must have a purpose beyond simply we want to make as much money as possible. And the work I do that I really love doing with the business leaders and the entrepreneurs that I mentor now, it shows up in different ways depending on their experience, their age, and the company that they work for. But at the heart of it, it's always about purpose. What is it I really want to be doing with my life as a leader? And once I've identified that, how does it express itself in my behavior, in the way I build my networks, and in the places and the people I want to work with? So
and I think
more and more reflective on that the older I get, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I think you make an important point around having the purpose and therefore having a mission and value system that you can embed as a leader and then grow an organization that builds that, but also the people should understand that purpose and mission as be reflective of that as they start to implement their own leadership qualities and so on.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah, you and I could talk a lot about this, and what I want to do is I want to sort of move into the next question, because I think, what a rich career you've had, what a wonderful and very diverse. And if we had all day to wax lyrically about it, that would be wonderful.
I hear you. Let's move on. Yeah. Let's move on.
But for the leaders today, and I think it's pretty tough, from where I'm sitting, it's pretty tough times when I speak to a lot of business leaders, when I speak to a lot of entrepreneurs. And I think, because we're in these, especially in the UK, if you're thinking about Brexit, or you're thinking about scaling a business, or you're thinking about starting a business, I think there are, bits of me that have been worn away through my journey, leading me from corporate life into my own business. But from your perspective, what's the one, I don't know if we can whittle it down to one, but what's the one characteristic that you believe every leader should at least possess in their sort of, armory that would make them that memorable leader?
I think, again, at the heart of it is self-awareness about purpose and the impact one wants to make in the world. I think given the complexities that you've talked about there, the fact that everyone hates business, Brexit, Trump, climate change, it's just, software, there's so many changes and so many challenges that leaders in all sorts of business models are facing. Is it more intense than it's ever been? Maybe, but it's certainly it's certainly from the work that I've been doing over the last 10 years, and certainly the work with as an investor and mentor and coach now of senior leaders. It's just, people are bewildered, I think, often about what is the right thing to do, what is the road ahead, when what they're surrounded with is ambiguity, mixed signals, and complexity. And I think the only way you can get...
Yeah, sorry, go on, carry on.
And I think the only way you can get through that, the starting point has to be real clarity for yourself about what your purpose is. I'm mentoring someone at the moment, and I think where we're getting to is that his personal purpose as a leader in the world is now out of alignment with the organization that he's with. Right. And now we're beginning to talk about how he exits in a way that is true to his values and supports the business. So I think that clarity of purpose, I think, is the core characteristic that every leader should have. And I'm constantly surprised when I talk to some senior leaders, when you talk about that, and they just don't give that enough thought and time, and they spend a lot of their time on tactics, and they spend a lot of their time on politics, and they spend a lot of their time on technology. But actually, when you ask them the question, what is it for? What are you for? And what do you want to be for in the world? Often there's a sort of stuttering response. And then I think there are other characteristics that people need. I think you need to be really comfortable in living in uncertainty and ambiguity, where there are no easy, quick answers. I don't think that's for everybody. I think you've got to be really up for that. And I think, again, increasingly I see this, particularly amongst the entrepreneurs that I spend my time with, is knowing that looking after yourself, your mental health, your physical health, is absolutely vital. I see so many, particularly young startup entrepreneurs who, brag about the fact that they're working every day of the week and haven't had a holiday for 2 years.
It's not sustainable.
And you go, well, great. Well, where do you think that's going to end up?
Yeah.
And how can you be at your best if you're burning through your energy and your passion like that? So I think clarity of purpose, a willingness and openness to live in ambiguity, and a commitment to look after yourself, your mental health and your physical health. And I'd say finally, the drive to surround yourself with great talent and great people, often who will be better at you than at some stuff. And I think if you can try and get that, and we never get perfect.
We never do.
All of us. We always some of it. But I think for myself personally, that's what I've tried to do, and certainly with the people I lead and the people I mentor and the people we invest in, it's around those issues that I like to spend my time talking to leaders.
Sure. I think I like your point about the idea that entrepreneurs and leaders are trying to outdo themselves with how many hours they work, and the reflection is that you can't sustain that kind of lifestyle, and you can't build a company, you can't lead a company in that manner. And it leads on to your last point about having those people around you to enable you to sort of step back slightly as well. Because, from that point of view, a leader must be surrounded by those people who can, and as you said, often be much better than them. And that's the thing that I think the political game and all those tactics, why are leaders still het up in this mode of, I must be able to do it all, and can't kind of extract themselves and be able to think, we need to, I need to let go of a certain amount of control.
Well, I think the reason is that there still is a certain business is overwhelmingly led by males, isn't it, and men.
Sure. Yeah.
So there's been a macho culture. The entire business school industry has been pouring out for decades this idea of the heroic know-it-all leader.
Right. Yes.
In a time now where there is no one person that can have all of the answers, then I think a much more collegiate approach to leadership, and an understanding that a great leader needs to be a great coach and a great creator of space. Talent around him or her. Yeah. I think that's where we need to be going. And you can lead a business on that old model, but what will probably happen is you'll probably end up drinking too much. Your relationships will suffer. You'll be a crap parent, and great talent won't want to come and work with you because it's a cliche, isn't it? That young people join companies where they have a sense of agency, and I think there's a lot of truth in that. So I think the old bloke know-it-all at the top of the company giving out instructions, but anyone that's doing that, their company's days are numbered. And
I'm assuming that's what your book will touch on, the new book that you're writing around. It is. I think leaning into leadership, or what's?
Sorry, say that again, Smith.
Was the title about leaning into leadership?
No, it's a bit of a play on words about that book that came out a few years ago from the COO of Facebook. She wrote a book called Lean In, which is addressed to women about how do women make the best of senior leadership. And I think that provoked a major debate about the role of women in the boardroom and in the C-suite.
Absolutely.
But what I've noticed, for 10 years now, I've been hanging around, nosing around, the C-suites of lots of companies who all talk about change and the need for innovation and all of that. And what's the one common denominator in all of those companies, regardless of industry, sector, products, and so on? It's white, middle-aged men. And I think that unless we innovate around how we lead, and I include myself in that, being 57, I think nothing will really change. And I think that we as middle-aged leaders need to learn new ways of behaving, and sort of lean out a bit and allow more diversity into the companies. And I think this idea of the sort of linear line of leadership, I slog my guts out in my 20s, 30s and 40s, and then if I'm lucky and good enough, I end up on the leadership team and the exco and the board, and then I will, retire in my late 50s and take my shares and go and play golf, or, go and...
those days are over.
Those days are long over. But I don't see in the behaviour of too many blokes in leadership that their behaviour is actually changing.
It's actually changing.
Because, they're not incentivized to do it. Business as usual is what get incentivized. The next quarter's return, incremental change. All of those things are what get rewarded. Being able to play the game, be able to sort of do the politics. And I think that, the irony is that I think we face in business is that if it's true that business has never faced such times of change and disruption, let's assume that's true. Who are the people on the front line of dealing with that challenge? The group of people who least like to change, at least are unwilling to change, and are certainly not incentivized to change, middle-aged blokes. So I want the book to create a conversation between us. Not that we're all, horrible. We're not. We have great skills, we have experience, we have wisdom, we have hard-won battle scars that I think are very useful for generations. But we have to think about how we organize ourselves and behave in that last 5-10 years of our careers in order to really bring about the change that's required and to make space earlier for younger...
For others. A longer conversation, but I think I'd like to move on to the next question. You're working in a number of different investor organizations, like you mentioned Centrica and Impact Ventures. And I think I want to lean over towards the sort of what everybody's talking about today: digitization, technology, the pace of change. What's in that sense? Because we've seen all these big disruptors coming in, and essentially disrupting traditional businesses, and the leaders of those organizations didn't see it. The blockbusters didn't see what was happening. The Kodaks didn't see what was happening. But you've now got the hotels didn't see Airbnb. The taxis didn't see Uber. So what's from that perspective and that uncertainty that you mentioned earlier? What's the biggest challenge you think leaders of traditional organizations or perhaps those that are trying to move but are too slow? What's their biggest challenge that they're facing today?
Well, we certainly live in interesting times, don't we? And what I find really interesting about the Googles and the Ubers and the Amazons and the Facebooks is although their technology certainly is disruptive and demands monopoly because you have to dominate. There's no room for two Facebooks. One has to win, and therefore it becomes a monopoly. So I think that what's interesting is while the technology has been, to use that terrible word, disruptive, all business models are very old-fashioned, aren't they? Monopolies led by blokes, led by blokes. And it often seems to me that when I go to Silicon Valley, the leaders of these companies, Google, Facebook, they look more like Russian oligarchs to me than they do sort of business revolutionaries with their private planes and the little bubbles that they live in. So it's an interesting. It's at a cultural level. There's something very interesting going on. But I think, to answer your question about leaders in sort of traditional models confronting Jeff Bezos, to kind of simplify it in that way, I think that the biggest challenge that they face is the making the mistake of believing that the challenge is about technology. The challenge is absolutely not about technology. The challenge is about culture and talent and leadership behavior. Because I think what's different about Bezos, obviously the tech is amazing and world dominating, but the culture, whether you like it or not, and there's a lot of it not to like. James Bloodworth's book recently about the time he spent inside Amazon and places like that is shocking in the way in which people are treated. But the fact that Bezos is, and I think it's true for Google and the rest of them, this maniacal focus on the purpose and the mission.
Right. Yeah.
And really, really sticking to it. And I think
square back to that.
What's been a big shock to the leaders of traditional businesses as they try and get their heads around artificial intelligence and all that stuff that's coming, which is really important. I'm not saying it's not important that leaders understand that, but the real challenge is cultural, and the real challenge is about purpose and mission. And I think that is the biggest challenge. And I see so many leaders in businesses misreading what the real challenge is. I mean, you can spend, go to Silicon Valley and do the tour like everyone else does, and come back and wow, that was amazing, and we must collaborate.
But what do you really pick up from that?
Yeah, but okay, fine. The challenge that you're faced with is the culture, the way you organize yourself, and you as a leader. How will you respond to this culturally? I think that's the biggest challenge to face.
So I was at a forum yesterday, industry leaders in the room, and we were talking very much about on one side the technology, but on the other how organizations are adopting, achieving the results that they want, but equally what are the biggest inhibitors. And culture was one of the biggest discussion points that we had, not just for the advancement of work, but for the advancement of technology, for the advancement of careers.
Yeah, totally. And you look at the way a lot of mainstream, whatever traditional businesses are organized. They're organized in that very hierarchical way.
Command and control structure.
Layers.
Yeah.
Yeah, a command and control structure where I mean there are some exceptions, but I think there are too many businesses where what gets you up the tree, what accelerates your career up to the C-suite is not how you disrupt things. It's not how you brought in diverse networks into the culture of the organization. It's so often about you're being rewarded for obedience. You're being rewarded for business as usual, doing business as usual really well, and then you get rewarded. And so, as those you go further and further up the tree, it becomes whiter and whiter, maler and maler.
But there's a big disconnect as well.
Talk the same and have so many of the same backgrounds.
Sure.
So I think that is a real challenge, and I don't see that being addressed, because in order to address it, you have to go to some really difficult issues about who does get to the top, who's allowed to stay there, who gets rewarded, what gets incentivized, and it's you still sit in rooms and just have to remind people: is this the most imaginative thing we can do? Have an 11 middle-aged bloke sitting around a room talking about innovation? No, it's not.
Well,
and I think it will require a level of courage, a level of experimentation, a level of ballsiness, frankly, that a lot of mainstream businesses don't actually demonstrate a lot.
On that point, Liam,
certainly aren't incentivized for it.
I'll stop you there on that point. This next question, I think, follows straight into that. It's a good segue, because what you're talking about is that typical old school type of leadership the same kind of people. They look the same, very much probably come from the same schools, and golf is on their mind very much when they want to go out and do business. But the new leaders of today, the people that are building amazing businesses based on purpose and coupling with technology. Well, what are the typical rules they should be breaking based on what you've just mentioned about the way that the boardrooms are still looking the same, and it's still very much that command and control structure? What rules do they need to be breaking today in order to really burst through that?
The big cultural thing I think that needs to be broken is this idea, this linear idea of leadership. Mm-hmm. That you start here, then you move up, then you move up, and then I think that I don't think there's any easy answers to that. And I think that there's been few successful attempts at it, but that has to be broken. And the reason it needs to be broken is we need to find rebuild cultures that acknowledge that actually the 57-year-old senior leader won't have all of the answers. That answer might lie with a 27-year-old in, the customer service team. And so breaking those rules of hierarchy, breaking rules of deference, etc. I think those are the rules that need to be broken. I just want to say again, Sunil, I am not saying that all middle-aged blokes are,
I know.
Redundant. I'm not saying that at all.
I know you're not saying that.
But I'm brilliant. You're brilliant. Well, you're not middle-aged. You're still a young boy.
Thank you.
You look at the Paul Pullmans. You look at Emmanuel Faber at Danone. You look at Foco at Royal DSM. These are middle-aged blokes doing amazing jobs of reinvention and attempting something pretty radical with the historic business models that they've got. But they are willing to break some of those.
And they're willing to be in an uncomfortable position doing so as well. And I think that's the one thing that
and in uncomfortable position doing so, and with and I think that's the big thing, isn't it? The likes of Coleman and Faber and so on. There are, I think the question for me is, are they harbingers of a future, the morphing of capitalism into something else? Or are they simply really interesting shooting stars, that are representative only of themselves, and once they've burned out, they've gone? I think we don't know.
Well, not yet. But how does it?
We have to. Optimism and pessimism are choices you make, aren't they? The choice I've made is to remain optimistic and hopeful that the examples that are being set by a small minority of business leaders who are genuinely trying to break the rules and remodel the business model and their own thinking and their thinking about leadership, that is the future.
And creating everybody in that organization with a mindset of leadership, not just the mindset of a worker, and the mindset of purpose. And I think that's the key difference.
Completely, but very difficult. I mean, culture change is really tough, isn't it? I mean, it took me 25 years to give up smoking, and I knew, I knew it was bad for me, but it was something.
Well, nobody likes that change, do they?
I think I don't want to be glib or fatuous in suggesting that culture change is hard. If you're, Paul Pullman trying to change the culture of 120,000 people spread over most countries of the world, that's really hard.
That's
and there are very few examples, and I spent 10 years at Wavelength looking for them, of scaled organizations who have successfully transformed their business model in the light of a changing world. The only company really that I think has done it really well is the life sciences business, Royal DSM, which used to be a Dutch mining company, and now does just the most amazing work in life sciences. But it came about because the leadership 10, 15 years ago decided that we need to, given where climate change is taking the world, we have to change this business model so that we're ready for what's coming. And their profitability, the fact that everybody wants to work for them, the quality of their innovation is evidence that it's working. Whether it will all work out, who knows? Whether lots of companies will follow, again, who knows? But we need to be breaking those rules and rethinking what business models look like. Not only because of the challenges that come from the sort of Silicon Valley model,
absolutely,
but also demographics are changing around the world. Climate change is going to have a massive effect, and will continue to have a massive effect on business. So unless some rules get broken and there are more leaders with the courage to break those rules, we're heading.
It's going to be much the same. Yeah, I hear you. We're going to move on. We're going to go into a slightly different view. I want to tap into your work with Centrica and possibly Impact Ventures. But where do you see this whole drive towards these big technological advances that we're currently making? Where do you think and where do you see that taking us in terms of companies, in terms of leaders? What's going to happen?
Yeah, well, the Centrica, owners of British Gas, and they have an energy business in the United States and in Ireland. Struggling like a lot of big businesses are in that energy market to understand what their future is, and how not only as customer behavior changes, but as technology changes and the demands of consumers led by technology, and also how in the future energy is going to be generated and distributed. Those are massive questions.
Yeah, they are.
And if you've got an infrastructure like British Gas with 10,000 engineers and pipe work all over the place, and a business model that has nearly 200-year-old company that had so many different parts of its evolution, that's a really, really big challenge. And what's at stake is really important. It's if the lights go off and the gas doesn't work,
absolutely,
we have civil war within 24 hours.
Well, it's people's lives.
Society would collapse. So it's a potentially life and death environment that people are having to think about. How does new technology impact? How does the way in which you engage with consumers need to change in the future? And so Centrica has created this fund called Centrica Innovations, which is where they intend to invest £100 million in startup and scale-up technology all over the world. There's members of the team in Silicon Valley, in Tel Aviv, in London, New York, sort of scouting for new things. And one of the things that has been really and I sit on a group of an advisory council that's made up of independents from different worlds. We have entrepreneurs, investors, academics, sure. and then there's old granddad me sitting there as well, throwing my tough and take me worth in. What really impressed me has been the honesty and seriousness with which the people who run Centrica Innovations, Charles Cameron and his team, are really taking seriously not only the technology challenges. We were in Brooklyn recently, and we had presented to us, a guy who's using blockchain in Brooklyn in order to experiment with hyper localized sharing of energy.
Right.
Really fascinating, and there's and we've invested in that company, and in fact they're soon to start a pilot in Cornwall, in the southwest of the UK. Yeah. So it's small. It has to be small when it starts off, but what's really interesting in the discussions when we hear about what they're investing in is this enormous company taking these bets on a whole series of things, big data, mining companies, blockchain, artificial intelligence, or autonomy in mobility and all that sort of stuff, but not knowing actually what are the bets that are going to win, and that tension between a highly regulated and necessarily highly regulated industry with a legacy systems and legions of people, and at the same time trying to be quick, risk-taking, accepting of failure. That's really, really challenging. And so the conversations that we have are, I think the really useful ones that we bring to the process are the ones where technology, culture, and legacy rub up against each other.
Challenge, yeah.
And I think it's in that space where Centrica and all the other businesses that are attempting to understand what the future is like and invest in, riders into the future. It's in that space that I think they're all, sometimes stumbling, sometimes having breakthroughs, but trying to live with the complexity of all of that. So, we all know technology is taking us somewhere different. Exactly where that is, how we can control it, what it means to the business we already have, and the style of leadership that we exercise. All of that's up for grabs.
Well, I think we could have a discussion on that, just that. But I'd like to move on. I think we've talked about this in some length in terms of the behaviours and characteristics that derail leaders' careers, and I think you've talked about the sameness of what we see in the boardrooms today. And I know you're not generalizing, but where you've had your experiences, but is there a key difference between those individuals that don't make it and those that do? What's the bit that really derails their careers?
I think remaining curious into middle age and really, really believing that I don't have all the answers.
Right.
Because I've had a successful career. So I think if you look at Pullman and Faber and some of the leaders I really admire, they remain passionately curious about the world. And in remaining passionately curious about the world, it means that other passionate, curious people move towards them. It means that they aren't shutting down conversations like, we tried that 20 years ago. So I think the break that most derails leaders is losing their curiosity and falling into a been there, done that, business as usual mindset. And I think that's the trait that I think derails people the most.
Yeah, and the possibility of change. That's what I'm hearing amidst that sort of last bit of. And
not only intellectually, giving, yes, things have to change, but actually showing that in the way they organise their time and the sorts of people they employ.
And that's very important. You're
the sorts of partnerships they're willing to have, the risks they're willing to take with their reputation internally and externally.
And not always.
It all comes back to curiosity.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on. You've mentioned so many people right now in the last few minutes. But key to this is who. I know that you there must be 3 or 4 people, but who's been the most influential in your career? Who's had the most impact on your life?
Well, you know what? I think it's my wife, Maggie. No, seriously,
Yeah.
I think I've been. We've been together for 37 years. We celebrated our 37th wedding anniversary. I know, blimey.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's just such a gift. But I think that 2 things about her, I think, that have had a big impact on me. One is the acceptance that we're different.
Yeah.
And that we will, our presence in the world is going to be different. I think that's very liberating and freeing for me over the years. And also willingness to change. We are not the people we were. When we met, we were young, idealistic.
Absolutely. 30 years ago, yeah, of course.
World activists. We're certainly not young. We're not Catholic anymore. I think we still have an idealism there and an energy. So she's had a major impact on me. And at the times in my life where I've wanted to make big changes, going to Liverpool, getting involved in the struggle in South Africa, joining up with Jamie, stopping doing that, giving up a well-paid, high-profile CEO job to get stuck into the challenge of creating my own business when I was 48. coming out of that business when the back end of last year. All of those are, have been
major,
choices. And she's always questioned me about them, interrogated me, but always in the end supported me, and that's been brilliant. At a more business sort of level, there was a guy called Graham Morris, who was the CEO of Rolls-Royce and Bentley cars. When I was running a social enterprise in Liverpool, he came onto my board. I sort of stalked him to come onto my board. He was a major impact on me in had more commercial nous in his body, having spent his career in the car business, than I will ever have. He had more than his little finger than I will ever have in my life. He was able to teach me lots of things about business in a way that wasn't condescending and allowed me to express who I was rather than have to mimic him. So Graham Morris was so if I had to choose to me, I'd say Maggie and Graham.
Brilliant. And my final question to you is, you mentioned a couple of books earlier, but in terms of leadership, or just generally about business, what's the best book you've read this year? What would you say? It's something that's had that lasting, profound impact.
Can I have two? One is there's one called Leadership B. There's one called Leadership BS by Jeffrey Pfeffer at Stanford University. I think it might have come out the year before last, and that's a full frontal assault on the leadership development industry. As a bunch of charlatans who don't know what they're talking about. I read it with great interest. I'm sure you did. I like its honesty, I like its directness, and I like its call to action. I think that's a great book. And then a book that's recently been published is called Be More Pirate by a man, Sam Conis Allende. I'll declare an interest here. I've mentored him for a few years. This is his first book, and he's kind of lent into the history of pirates as a kind of inspiration and role model for the kind of rebellious spirit that is required in the world today. Gotcha. So I would recommend people buy Sam's book, Be More Pirate.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, those are good suggestions. Thank you so much for your thoughts. I just wanted to turn it over to the people on the call very quickly, and certainly if they've got any questions that they would like to ask Liam. And any questions for Liam? That was my mistake. If there aren't any questions, Liam, I profoundly thank you for your time. It's been wonderful to hear your insights. And do you know what? I've learned so much about you, even though I've known you for quite a while. But I love your summing up of leadership. I love your summing up of where we are in terms of business and the journey that technology is certainly having an impact on, and where leaders need to drive that towards. And certainly I think cultural aspect around running companies is a major, major issue, and it's a major impediment to technological advancement, in my opinion. And that's what I've got from you.
It is the issue. It is the issue.
Yeah. And on that note, I'd like to thank you once more for your time, and it's been a wonderful chat. And hopefully, you can come back and tell me all about your book when it's published.
I will do so. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.